gangster rap kind of girl.
Some of that. Anything's better than Fleetwood Mac. That's the point of music. But I was not consulted. Are you leading the show, or can I just chit-chat now?
No, we're waiting for music. I'm working union here. So I saw you in the room signing a bunch of books. There was an entire room filled with books.
Yes, and I sign them fast.
And I was expecting you to come out here with a pen in your hand, a la Bob Dole.
Now I'm covered with indelible ink from signing your books. I guess we're going to be personalizing them during the show.
Yes. And then you can see that Anne's telling the truth here, because she's Anne all up here, but in her hands it's Jolson.
Audio looks good.
Since we're at the Nixon Library, just come up and chit chat before you start. How much time do you have?
What's that? Do you want him in it or no? What do you think?
I know less now than I did before.
I do highly recommend to all of you the Civil Rights chapter in particular. It will give you an all-new view of Richard Nixon and the lies that have been told about the civil rights history in the United States. I had Juan Williams read it because I sort of attack Martin Luther King and elevate Thurgood Marshall, and even Juan Williams said, reading the chapter, and obviously he's an expert on this, he wrote a biography of Thurgood Marshall, some of the quotes from Nixon, he said, gave him chills, because Nixon was so good on civil rights, completely contrary to the history you've been told your entire life.
The Democrats were almost universally bad on that.
Yes, I think drop the word almost from that sentence. Though Robert Caro in his book on LBJ, this is why I do my own research, I noticed, all the segregationists in Congress, certainly all of them in the Senate, were Democrats, 100% Democrats. But he doesn't call them Democrats. What he calls them is Southerners. Some were Southerners and some weren't.
Come back for Larry Elder at 9 a.m. Talk Radio 790 KABC.
Teacher, Johnny going back to school. One day Johnny gonna do something. Show me nobody's fool. Oh yeah.
7:05 on Talk Radio 790 And I am also pleased to introduce my special guest co-host for the evening. She is the author of 8 New York Times bestseller books, including the brand new one that's on the list right now, Demonic, Anne Coulter.
We're going to talk about nothing but Anthony Weiner.
And now, I have to be honest with you about our plot here today, too, because we had a cocktail reception down where after you finished signing the book.
Yes, I know well about that.
We were hoping to get you all liquored up so you'd come up here and drop another F-bomb on John Edwards.
No, I think the new one now is retarded.
Can't say retarded?
No, we got it back. I was flying from Chicago to D.C. right before my book came out, and I didn't notice. I was sitting with, he's very unnoticeable, right next to Rahm Emanuel the whole flight. And it wasn't until we were literally walking off the plane, I saw that he was standing right in front of me, but we were walking. He comes up to about my clavicle. I almost ran after him so I could thank him for bringing the word retarded back. Because they keep taking words away from us, but then we got one back.
Well, Mark Halperin dropped one on MSNBC this morning, the name is short for Richard. Can we have that back? Can we use that again?
No, because it was about the angel Obama.
Yeah,
if only it had been about, it could have been about Palin, it could have been about Bachman, it could have been about George Bush, and we would have had it back.
It's amazing how if you call a conservative a slut, as Ed Schultz did, he got suspended for 10 days. Mark Halperin, I think he's in a gulag right now, going after the Messiah.
And the odd thing is, it's the first time I've agreed with Mark Halperin.
Well, you've been everywhere promoting the book Demonic, and I've got to say that this book is one of my favorites. I like all of your books, although Treason's my favorite. But Demonic is right up there. You mentioned before we went on the air that one of the things that you did in this book, and it's all about the mob mentality.
Yes.
It's all about liberals subscribing to mob rule, mob beliefs, those sorts of things, and liberals who are in charge, whether they be politicians or pundits, people on TV, how they utilize the mob to get their way. And one of the more controversial aspects of it was when you went after the civil rights movement. And you said that Martin Luther King shouldn't be the hero of the civil rights movement, it should be Thurgood Marshall.
Yes. Yes, and I sort of thought that would stir up some trouble. Alas, liberals won't argue with you about anything historical because they don't know history. But it's sort of a crucial part in the arc of my book because the country has always understood the danger of mobs. The Federalist Papers arguing for one federal constitution shot through with the danger of mobs. You had the draft riots. Abraham Lincoln, of course, that was Democrats lynching blacks in New York. Abraham Lincoln sends the troops in, smashes the riots, goes back and wins the war. But in the 60s, for the first time, I sort of think of Martin Luther King the way I think of Operation Rescue. Civil disobedience on behalf of a good cause, and it's necessary because democracy isn't working in this instance. But you have to remember the only reason democracy wasn't working from 1961 to 1969 was there was a Democrat in the White House. I think the hero of the civil rights movement was Thurgood Marshall, though I never thought this in law school. That's when I first heard of him, and he was just a liberal then, sadly, signing on to all the opinions with William Brennan. But you look back at the young Thurgood Marshall, and I say he is in the tradition of the American Revolution, bringing lawsuits, redeeming civil rights. He won Brown versus Board of Education back in 1954. And as long as a Republican was in the White House, Dwight Eisenhower, those rulings would be enforced. Dwight Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne to Little Rock to enforce Brown versus Board of Education. But unfortunately, in the 1960 presidential election, Kennedy, quote, won. Thank you, Chicago. And then we have Democrats in the White House for the next 8 years. Now, first Kennedy, then LBJ. LBJ was an actual segregationist. JFK was not a segregationist, but because he's a Democrat, he has to appeal to the racist mob within his party. So both Kennedy and LBJ dragged their feet on enforcing civil rights. So even though Thurgood Marshall keeps winning these victories the American way, we have a constitution, you assert your constitutional rights, you have every much of a right in America as the most penniless immigrant maid, as Dominique Strauss-Kahn in New York is about to find out. Not quite the same phrase. So the Democrats drag their feet, and I think the civil rights movement gave mobs a halo. So for one thing, I'm retelling and telling the truth about the civil rights movement in America. And the other thing is to remind Americans, because you'll notice every time, liberals run out on the street and start smashing Starbucks windows, they go, oh, this is the new civil rights movement. No, it's not. You're not black. This isn't civil rights. And moreover, you'd never hear Martin Luther King's name if only Nixon had won the 1960 election, because when he came in 1968, in 1 year he desegregated all the southern schools. More desegregation took place in 1 year under Richard Nixon than before that.
That you haven't been attacked more for this, because I gotta say, when I saw you promoting the book on The View, I thought you were gonna be the recipient of maybe 45 screeching menopausal explosions. And I was depressed that it didn't happen, because I was just hoping for the chance to see you put Whoopi Goldberg in her place.
You can't imagine how long-faced I was when I walked out of there that day. No, I thought a cat fight really sells a book.
Mud wrestling match, like between Bachman and Palin.
I've been on The View about 4 times. It's actually always been a lovely experience, except the penultimate time, which was the only time Barbara Walters was there. So I think by process of elimination, I figured out the problem. But the penultimate time, when they all started yelling at me, it was the most fun a girl can have that doesn't involve, a paper robe and a speculum. Just screaming at me. And so, I was expecting the same thing. Alas, no, they talking about the economy. And on air, I said, you're driving away all your viewers. I'm about to start telling you about Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. The channels are switching all over America. But they were lovely to me. And the reason I think liberals haven't jumped on the Martin Luther King point is A, I'm right. And also, in several of my books, the thing I expect to be attacked for, in treason, they've spent 50 years describing Joe McCarthy as, on a par with Adolf Hitler. I come out and a third of the book is on how Joe McCarthy was one of the greatest Americans who ever lived. I kind of expected an attack on that, but nothing, not a peep. God bless, a third of the book is denouncing, and point by point, I think again, they can't really argue, Darwin's Darwinian evolution. Not a single question about that. They always fixate on some little joke, twist it around, repeat it in angry earnestness, but they'll never argue with you about something factual, historical, scientific, because they don't know.
My guest is Ann Coulter here in town 10 o'clock tonight, live from the Nixon Library in North London. The book is demonic. Everyone here is going to get a copy. They're going to get it signed. If you haven't gotten yours out in Radioland, you can do it at Amazon.com. More with Ann Coulter up next, right here on John Coulter Show. On Radio 790. And in your book, you rely on a lot of research from a French social scientist. And it's the first time, I think, in the last month that I've read about a Frenchman who hasn't molested the hell. But this guy did good social science.
He did excellent social science. I've always sort of sensed that liberals were mob. I was just up in Michigan last week. I got together with some of my friends from law school. I went to Michigan Law School. I completely forgot that when I was in law school, my roommate was interviewing with the CIA at the University of Michigan Law School. And of course, the liberal mob comes in and starts banging on the door of the interview room where the CIA is interviewing, because why? They hate America.
And Puerto Rico.
And Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
The dean of the university bravely stands up for the free speech of the lunatic liberal mob and asks the CIA guy to leave. And by the way, the dean of the law school is now the dean of Columbia, who invited Ahmadinejad to speak. So he's been standing up for American rights for a long time. So the rest of the CIA man's interviews that day took place in my little apartment in Ann Arbor. So I've been dealing with the liberal mob for a long time, and I just had this idea that they're very mob-like, and you see them on TV, and they're using all the slogans, the repetition. Remember during the Clinton impeachment, all at once, they all start saying, it's a rush to judgment, it's a rush to judgment. How do they all know? It's like, daylight savings time change for when they go from global warming to climate change. How do they all know to change? And so I read all these books on mob behavior, groupthink, financial panics, riots, and it was the father of groupthink, Gustave Le Bon, and his book, The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind, page after page, I was screaming when I was reading it. This is liberals. This is liberals. Now I understand MSNBC.
I'm glad you're the one. I don't think anyone has been able to understand Al Sharpton since he started. Difficult to know.
He's all over my book. He's a good example of the contradictory thinking of liberals. And with MSM, that's an aspect of groupthink, that you can hold two completely contradictory ideas in your head at the same time. Not, 20 years later, well, I've changed my mind. No, in the same television segment. And MSNBC, it's like they got a grant from the NEA to put on the absolutely most inappropriate person to talk about a subject. So whenever there's a Republican sex scandal, they bring in Chris Kofinas, who his big role in politics was, yes, to be John Edwards' spokesman to cover up the affair. So bring him in to talk about Mark Sanford.
Well, that worked out so well for him. Nobody knows about the love child.
His famous moment in politics is covering up a sex scandal. He's going to come in and make smarmy, sneering remarks about a Republican with a sex scandal. And of course, then after another example of it was after the Arizona shooting, by Jared Loughner, liberal, pothead, atheist. I was just pointing out that in a sense, we were signing these books, this really shows the difference in the alternative media now. Timothy McVeigh and Jared Loughner are basically identical. Atheist potheads, but we didn't have the media last time, and they've been able to make it go down in history that Timothy McVeigh was, a card-carrying member of the Republican Party, probably a deacon at his church. No, he was an atheist pothead, and the conservative Michigan militia wouldn't let him in because they thought he was a nut, i.e., a liberal probably. But we counterattacked with Jared Loughner. In any event, after the Jared Loughner thing, when liberals are going on and on about how we need to engage in civility and discourse, and Sarah Palin put crosshairs on the congressional map, who did they bring on TV and invite to write guest columns more than any other man to talk about how incivility in rhetoric can lead to violence, but Al Sharpton, whose rhetoric actually has led to violence and the killing of 7 people at Freddy's in Harlem. I mean, his entire life is creating these fiery situations where someone ends up dead. Oh, let's bring in Al Sharpton to talk about this.
But Democrats never pay a price for that. Maxine Waters, a congresswoman here from California, was very popular in this audience. Was out literally dancing in the streets during the LA riots, saying that it wasn't a riot, it was a rebellion, and these are poor people who need shoes for their family. There were no consequences for that. She didn't seat in Congress. She's not a social pariah like she should be.
Right.
She is a distinguished member of the Democratic Party.
Well, you please know she's in my book, too. Yes, and she met with Reginald Denny's family, the one who dropped the cinder block. Sorry, Denny was the one who had the cinder block dropped on his head.
Damian Football Williams.
Thank you, Damian Football Williams. She visited Damian Football Williams.
Legal name.
To see if there was anything he needed. Could she help him? Did he need a job? Does he want to come work at her, congressional office or something? She did that. And you've probably all seen the videos of Damian Football Williams dropping a cement block on Reginald Denny's head, doing a victory lap around it, doing the high five. She is still an invited guest on well-respected guest on MSNBC, and yet, on the same station, they think putting a caterpillar in the cell of a terrorist at Guantanamo constitutes torture. How does that compare to dropping a cinder block on someone's head? Could we do that to the terrorists? We drop cinder blocks on their heads?
If we do that, it should be on like the Reginald Denny meeting was. But Democrats never pay a price for that. There's a city councilwoman in Los Angeles, Janice Hahn, who's running for Congress, who has to be the dumbest person in California politics. I literally think.
Are we including Barbara Boxer?
You're including Barbara Boxer, yes. If you put Janice Hahn's brain in a bird, the bird would fly backwards. She put street gang members on her staff. She hired them for her council staff. She's now running for Congress and is the favorite to win Jane Harman's seat. So she could just get a promotion. A woman who hires gang members. There are no standards in the Democratic Party for people who affiliate with the mob.
This is very sad about California. It's such a beautiful state. It's great what the Democrats have done with it. Really turned it into an economic powerhouse.
I gotta say, I have kind of a perverse enjoyment of watching Janice Hahn continue to win elected office after elected office, because I just can't wait. Nobody pays attention to her outside of California now because she's crazy. But now that she's a member of Congress, can you imagine the things that she's going to say on MSNBC?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Let's start sending out press releases for her.
Yes.
Get her on Rachel Maddow.
You can have the enemy people write all of those. My guest is Ann Coulter. The book is Demonic, How the Liberal Mob is Endangering America. More about the book, including how you traced it back to the French Revolution. We'll talk about that when we return. Also, we're going to start to work in some questions from the audience. I think we'll do that at the top of the hour. So if you have a question, get ready to go for Ann Coulter. So you went back and you researched this and you traced mob mentality and the liberal fascination with the mob all the way back to the French Revolution.
Yes, this is a 200-year history of liberals, and it's not pretty. I think the beginning of modern liberalism and modern conservatism started with the American Revolution. The French Revolution goes in totally different directions. and liberals have been hiding the French Revolution from us. I looked up, I was just telling them backstage, I looked up, for one thing, I have a lot of smart friends. They're smarter than I am. You can ask them about Russian czars or colonial American history. They know everything, everything, everything. None of my friends knew anything about the French Revolution. Only one of my professors at Cornell did. I thank him in the acknowledgments, because when I read books about things, I'm going to write about it. I like to rap to people about it. He was the only person I could talk to. And so I looked up. I went to Cornell. I was a history major. I didn't know about the French Revolution. I kind of knew they had the goofy calendar. But it's as important a story as Nazi Germany, and nearly as bloody. You had the most advanced, sophisticated nation in continental Europe turned into a human abattoir overnight. Just Frenchmen slaughtering Frenchmen. 600,000 Frenchmen died. It would be in terms of population loss, it would be the equivalent of this country having a 9/11 attack every day for 7 years. It was based on nothing. They're rushing out, slaughtering priests, desecrating Notre Dame. Marie Antoinette finds out that her best friend, Princess Lamballe, has been executed when they marched Princess Lamballe's head and genitalia on pikes outside Marie Antoinette's cell window.
She wasn't half the woman she used to be.
They fired her leg from a cannon. It was barbaric, shockingly barbaric, and it casually gets compared to the American Revolution all the time, with George Washington instructing his men to attend to religious services every Sunday and to behave like Christians and gentlemen. They are completely opposite revolutions. As you can see, the similarities to today's liberals, the French Revolution. That is the revolt of the mob, which did not lead to a republic, which did not lead to freedom. It led to, after 40 years of this insanity, they throw themselves into the arms of a dictator, Napoleon. And then they have another monarchy, and then another dictator, and then another monarchy, and then finally 80 years later they get something resembling a republic. Our revolution was fought by Christians, Englishmen, thinkers, debaters, and that created a different kind of revolution. It was not a mob revolt, it was the opposite of a mob revolt, and yet the French Revolution is the one that gets imitated around the world. In the Russian Revolution, in China, in Cuba, I guess it's more fun to be the leader of a mob revolt if you're the one who gets to be the leader. But that is where you see the beginning of modern liberalism and all of the techniques of the revolution, from the paranoid hypochondriac Jean-Jacques Rousseau, don't use reason with a mob, and there's a general will that we can impose on the people, just the elites have to grasp the general will, and then kill everyone who doesn't agree with the general will. That will be the general will, because the only people living agree with the general will. That is, I mean, you do see, I don't want to exaggerate this, but you see, this is how liberals think today. We've figured out how to give you health care free. It's going to save the country money, and I know you don't want it, but we figured it out. And just, you know, my roommate and I are Rhodes Scholars. Please stop bothering us with all this discussion. We've worked out on paper. It's going to be fantastic.
Why is it that, and this doesn't just go for Napoleon, it goes for all the dictators on the planet, they all seem to be not tall enough to ride the ride at Splash Mountain? You have Napoleon, you have Ahmadinejad, who's always in the members only
Kim Jong-il.
Little Kim.
Maximilian Robespierre.
Yeah.
See, it all starts with the French Revolution.
They're all Dennis Kucinich's doubles, though.
Perhaps that's why they're so angry at God.
It could be. They're angry in general. I'd be angry too if I couldn't ride Splash Mountain. Maybe that's what's But this is really the revolution that is copied all over the world, and domestically at the time in the United States, there was one of the founding fathers that really identified with that revolution.
The Democrat.
Yes, you're right. Thomas Jefferson. The fascination that Jefferson had with that mob rule in that revolution in France was crazy.
Well, he was first, in defense of Thomas Jefferson, though I think it's fair to say he is the father of the Democratic Party. I mean, if you look at his religious beliefs compared to today, he has more conventional Christian beliefs than Mitt Romney does. He's closer to, Jerry Falwell than any Democrat today. So, don't knock Thomas Jefferson too much, but he was kind of a dreamy, Democrat. And when he drafted the Declaration of Independence, for example, the drafting committee made hundreds of changes, inserted a lot more references to God, and when the French Revolution started, our supporters in England, Edmund Burke, and our founding fathers saw that this was a revolution that was not going to end well. It was just, dreamy, pointless, we'll redistribute income. Whereas, again, ours was a revolution of thinkers and debaters constantly chatting about the reasons for their revolution, putting out the Declaration of Independence, their erudite Christian sermons defending our revolution, whereas the French, they hear a rumor, they rush out and start hacking a priest to death. That's their revolution. But Thomas Jefferson, curiously, was the only, I think, of the founding fathers, one who was sympathetic to the French Revolution. There was also Thomas Paine, who's not quite a founding father, but he wrote Common Sense in defense of the American Revolution.
He's a founding stepfather.
Right. And it should probably be said that unlike most of our founding fathers, Thomas Paine wasn't born here, which the French noticed because he goes and he helps the French Revolution. And like so many helping the French Revolution, he ends up in prison, a few steps ahead of the guillotine. And the American delegation, because of Thomas Paine's help with our own revolution, goes to France and asks for Thomas Paine to be released. And the French said, he's not an American, he's an Englishman. And I think
according to William Daly, he's a Kenyan. The birth certificate. My guest is Ann Coulter. The book is Demonic: How the Liberal Mob is Endangering America. Here's a question that I always hear thrown out from the left, and I think it's a false allegation, and I think it's false in the most malicious kind of way. When they call the Tea Party a mob, they say, the right-wingers, they're just as big of a mob as the left-wingers, and they do it through the form of the Tea Party. That couldn't be more false, could it?
Yes, and obviously I write a lot about that in the book. The Tea Party is in the tradition of the American Revolution. I mean, again, look at the earmarks. These are thinkers, the Tea Partiers. What are they doing? They're reading the Constitution. They're reading Thomas Paine's Common Sense. They're trying to hold politicians' feet to the fire. They're not running out smashing Starbucks windows. You get any three liberals together upset about something, windows will be broken. And
specifically at Starbucks.
Yes, and for some reason they hate Starbucks.
Maybe they're intolerant to lactose.
Right. I think you're on to something there. In fact, the Christian Science Monitor reported about a year ago that police departments have rules around the country for what can be done at a street protest or gathering, and by and large, because most of the street protests or people coming together to petition government have traditionally been liberals. The rule has been no signs and no flagpoles because, oh gosh, they suddenly become weapons, smashing car windows. And very briefly, very soon after the Tea Party started, police departments across America became completely convinced that the Tea Partiers really just wanted to fly flags, specifically the American flag, and they could have flagpoles at their rallies. In the last two years since they've started, it's all been committed by liberals.
Yeah, including one guy out in Ventura County who had one of his extremities bitten off.
Yeah, he's in the book.
Clear that up.
And okay, I'm just moving right on from that.
Well, I need you to clarify.
Yes, he had his finger bitten off.
Yes, it's true.
And that was reported in 2 places in the entire country, the Washington Times and Neil Cavuto, and I mention it not only to show how insane and violent liberals are, but also for the smashing crescendo of my book, when I argue that conservatives and other law-abiding Americans have become too gentle and law-abiding and non-violent in the face of a mob. You always have to smash a mob. And this guy was interviewed on Cavuto, and he said, Cavuto asked him, well, would you press charges if they catch him? He said, oh, no, Mr. Cavuto, I'm not a litigious fellow. And of course, he wouldn't be able to point him out. But when you have an appendage bitten off by another human being because of your politics, you have got to press charges, you have got to call out the police, you have got to call out the national guard. Who was the leader of the LA riots? There's never really one leader. There's some who shout louder as others, as one analyst of mob movements has said, and sort of appoints himself as the leader. what's interesting about the Democrats, I mean, you often hear people say, liberals, they're very emotional. Not the elected Democrats. They are calculating and cold-blooded. But they are counting on an emotional response, not necessarily, weeping and fainting, unless you put Obama in front of them. But they are counting on people not being able to reason or think. They are speaking to a mob. It's one of the things, I mean, the whole mob psychology part of the book finally explained all these things I could never understand about liberals. And I do consider myself something of an expert on liberals. But there were a few small areas, and one was, I mean, a lot of these liberals you see on TV, I know they're smart. They at least get good scores on their SATs. Because they've gone to good colleges, and you see them on TV and they seem so stupid. And that is explained. A man in a crowd will lose some of his intelligence. He isn't the same as if he were an individual. It's why you can't reason with liberals. They use pictures, they won't explain how Democrats foisted suicidal mortgages on the banks, bundled the mortgages, sent them throughout the economy. The mortgages blew up, everybody's account blew up, Lehman Brothers blew up because of these bad mortgages foisted on the banks, politically correct mortgages foisted on the banks by the Democrats. No, they will tell you, Bush drove the car into the ditch. And Democrats think they have a full understanding of what happened to the economy. Oh yeah, Bush drove the car into the ditch. It's a picture, it's an image. That's what they understand. Try to reason with them and they can't understand.
I used to think the leader of the liberal mob was Keith Olbermann, because he was the highest rated show on MSNBC.
That was us watching him.
That's true. Well, now that he's on the current network, I think
He's
more
dead to
people,
me.
well,
No, he's gone now. No more columns on Keith Olbermann. He's dead to me.
Yeah.
A little internet TV show now. What's the point in watching that? But it was fun while it lasted.
more people are watching the Home Shopping Network than watching Keith Olbermann on Current.
And I'm telling you, I think...
And they have more to offer, by the way.
I kept wanting to get a bunch of right-wing talk radio hosts together and pick like a day or a week where we'd all agree, you'd tell your listeners, okay, this week we're not going to watch Keith Olbermann. And I swear his ratings would have gone down by 80% because we all watched him obsessively. You don't get that dynamite combo of prissy, pompous douchebaggery. He was just spectacular and massive ignorance, but now he's dead to me. He was fired about 6 months before, 4 months before my book came out, and for like 3 hours I was deeply depressed because I quote him obviously in the book, but I mean there isn't a chapter on Keith Olbermann or anything, but he's sprinkled throughout the book like raisins in a fruitcake. And I thought, do I have to go through and take all that up? But no, NBC put this raving lunatic on air for 8 years. They can't fire him, 4 months before my book comes out saying, oh, that's not fair to mention him. So he's there.
I'm curious about this level of douchebaggery. Now, if you have Keith Olbermann on top,
yes.
Where does Chris Matthews fit in?
Chris Matthews is more Vichy France. He will do anything to save his job. Anything.
It's kind of Keith Olbermann with more spit. When you watch Chris Matthews on TV, it's like watching a Gallagher concert. You just
Right, and he has the sort of blue-collar aspect and yet the politics of the nation, as long as that allows him to keep his job. He would have been great in Vichy France.
My guest is Ann Coulter. The book is Demonic, How the Liberal Mob is Endangering America. We're going to be taking your questions next.
In fact, one of the studies I cite in the book was they compared YAF students and SDS students in the 60s. Looked at them sort of sociologically, what their parents were, what their IQ was, what the income was. And in both cases, the children of liberal parents tended to be SDSers, looking at buildings. The children of conservative parents tended to be YAFers. Both the YAFers and the SDSers on average had a higher IQ than apolitical students, something you also find in the bell curve. Its interest in politics is correlated with a high IQ, particularly at a young age. The main difference between the SDSers and the YAFers, Young Americans for Freedom it was back then, was that the SDSers came from wealthier families. The poor put upon oppressed.
And-
And my parents were conservative.
Speaking of your parents, I remember you telling me a story one time that your dad told you when you went to college there was one thing that you couldn't major in. He would not allow you to major in as an undergraduate.
I didn't even find this out until years later. He actually told my oldest brother this. My father went to both college and law school on the GI Bill, and he just wanted to get through college as quickly as possible. He wanted to be a lawyer, and so he took the easiest possible major. He was done with college and law school in, I think, 3 years, because he went to summer school to get it all done, and he majored in sociology. So when my oldest brother went to college, he said, if you take a single course in sociology, I'm withdrawing your tuition.
All right, we got the next question here. The lady in black.
Hi, Anne. This is Megan Barrett. Nice
Hello.
to see you up there. I was wondering if you could name one piece of legislation that the Liberals have pushed through and made policy that has actually produced a well-intended result, or from their intentions, their well-intentions, if they've provided any results.
Fantastic question.
Megan.
I'm going to need until 10 o'clock to I'm thinking. I guess you could say that, after 100 years of fighting us on civil rights, it was some Democrats who supported the 1964 Civil Rights Act, though, as you probably know, and you will know after reading my book, that was supported by 80% of Republicans, only 60% of Democrats. And the only reason we finally got the Democrats to start voting for civil rights was because blacks were voting in large enough numbers that Democrats couldn't win at the polls anymore by playing to the racist segregationist mob. They had to start appealing to a new mob. So I guess you could say the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and after that, my mind is blank.
They think what they're doing is good, though, don't they? I mean,
No.
You don't think so?
No.
When a Democrat looks in the mirror or looks at pictures of his crotch on Twitter and sees himself, he does not see a villain, though. He sees a guy who's out there doing good things. They're just wrong. It's like the captain of the Titanic didn't want to end up at the bottom of the ocean. It just kind of happened that way.
No, the captain of the Titanic had absolutely good intentions. Democrats do not. They knew, look at Social Security and Medicare. They knew they were setting up a Ponzi scheme. It is a literal definition of Ponzi scheme. Recipients. This is the definition of a Ponzi scheme, and the people who invented it knew that's okay. The bill won't come due. The collapse of the Bernie Madoff scheme will not happen until I'm dead and buried, and everyone will have honored me in all that time. I think we should go find them, dig up their bodies, and shoot them.
All right, next question.
Hi, Ann. My name is Lance. My question is about the Obamacare healthcare mandate. Yesterday in Cincinnati, the Federal Appeals Court ruled that it was constitutional, and their reasoning was really tortured. They said that because people who don't have their own insurance choose not to have insurance, that thereby affecting the entire country. And they said that the Commerce Clause, obviously, the Commerce Clause has to, pardon me.
It has to have an effect on the economy. I haven't read the decision, but I've read other silly decisions by the Supreme Court.
It just seemed to me
and I know the direction they're going in. The only thing I'd say about that is it's unconstitutional. Whether the Supreme Court finds it unconstitutional, no one knows. Who could have guessed the Constitution, or the Supreme Court could gaze upon the Constitution and see, oh, here's a right to stick forks in babies' heads. I defy you to look through the document and find a reference to sticking forks in babies' heads, and yet they did. So you never really know with the Supreme Court, but they're the ones who are going to have the last word. And I wouldn't be terribly discouraged by an appellate court ruling in this case, because to rule that Obamacare is unconstitutional as an appellate judge is a big step. And I think they may want to leave that in the hands of the Supreme Court. I don't think that really tells us much yet. It's easier to just say we're going to pass the buck to the big guys than just, if they had ruled Obamacare unconstitutional, it would have been the front page news on every newspaper in the country, and we wouldn't be talking about my book. That's all we'd be talking about. It would be so huge, and for appellate court judge to do that. Yeah, I work it in.
Well, that's what liberals use. Liberals use the Interstate Commerce Clause to give them carte blanche authority to do whatever they want. The
All right.
Violence Against Women Act
My law firm got it declared unconstitutional.
was using the Interstate Commerce Law. The only thing that had to do with interstate commerce was maybe that OJ lost his Hertz. That's it.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, they acted like, again, they want to compare everything to the Civil Rights Movement. So they wanted to say the Violence Against Women Act, well, it's like the 1964 Civil Rights Act, as if there were portions of the country where women were forced to wear burqas. You know, what state?
It's called Detroit.
What state was specifically discriminating against women, and how does, mugging a woman or raping a woman, what does that have to do with commerce again? So there have been, since the crazy rulings interpreting everything, a guy growing wheat on his own farm as affecting commerce, more recently there have been a few rulings saying that there are limits to the Commerce Clause. First there was Lopez, and then there was my law firm's case, Morrison, which declared the Violence Against Women Act unconstitutional, that you can't do it under. And Lopez was the Guns-Free School Zone Act, because guns near schools have a huge effect on interstate commerce, apparently, but the Supreme Court said no, so I don't know, we'll see what the Supreme Court says.
What kind of arguments do they make before the courts when they're trying to explain how this deals with interstate commerce? Because if you're trying to use the guns-free school zones thing, do you say if kids get shot, there's no more pencils to buy? Or how do they do it with a straight face? Seriously. How do they write some of those opinions with a straight face? When Roe versus Wade was argued before the Supreme Court, as the attorney was arguing for a right to abortion in the Constitution, he was ticking off the rights, or the provisions, allegedly protecting the right to kill an unborn child, and it was like, the Fourth Amendment against unreasonable search and seizure. The court, the audience, and it's a very small audience, it's about the 10th the size of this room here, burst out laughing. And then that became the law of the land. So they don't need to be serious. Next question.
I'm Danny. Hi.
Hello.
I want to know what you would say to an aspiring writer, political writer, about dealing with the mob. As a blogger myself, I've already gotten some hate mail. My friends keep telling me to stop because
Running shoes.
No, hate mail, that's a kick in the pants. That wakes me up in the morning. No, what you have to worry about with liberals is physical violence. And for that, I recommend that you travel with large, strong, conservative men and encourage state legislators to adopt the rule I proposed in my column yesterday, a one free punch rule. Because liberals do know, I wrote about this Glenn Beck thing, and they know exactly how far they can go, and they know that a public figure, it always happens to conservatives, it never happens to liberals, a conservative public figure can't punch you, can't talk back, because we have something to lose. We could be sued. Our bodyguards could be sued. So they never do anything that would actually justify a punch. But I think, if you're
And that's a badge of honor for them, too. If they harass a Glenn Beck, or they harass a Sean Hannity, or an Ann Coulter.
When they have 1,000 people on their side surrounding the conservative, they think that's brave. Explain to me how that's brave.
Especially when it's a girl.
They are the biggest pussies in the universe. If you're tormenting someone, for one thing, whom you outnumber, for another thing, or it's a sucker punch, or that person can't fight back without risking a lawsuit, I think you should, it's like taunting a guy in handcuffs. It's like baiting a bear chained to the wall. I think you should be allowed to punch people who torment strangers. One free punch.
All right, it is 8:15 in the evening. John Phillips broadcasting live from the Nixon Library in Orange County with special guest co-host Ann Coulter.
I said, this time, they cannot vote for John Kerry. Or maybe it was probably Obama in 2008. It can't happen again this year. And one of my right-wing Jewish friends said to me, Ann, they'll always break your heart. it's baffling to me. It's baffling to everyone. And one thing I'll say that I found interesting when I was describing to people what my book was about, and I didn't tell many people before it came out, but I tell some of my right-wing friends it's about the danger of mobs, and back to the French Revolution, how liberals operate like mobs. The people who grasped the point most quickly were Jewish conservatives. They have not fared well at the hands of mobs. And it was interesting how very quickly they knew what I was talking about and where I was going with this, whereas with others, mobs, I don't know, it's like a football game.
And it's never good when a party takes you for granted, and that's what the Democrats have done with the Jews. With
And the blacks!
Yeah, they know with the Jews, there's two things that are certain. They're circumcised and they're Democrats.
Right!
So they can take it to the bank for both of them.
But unlike the blacks, they at least get jobs in the administrations.
That's true.
Right?
That's true. And I don't know if you saw what happened in San Francisco. We did it as a joke, but they tried to ban circumcision. The Democrats in San Francisco actually tried to do this. They're putting an initiative on the ballot to ban circumcision there. And in one of the advertisements, they had the villain, it was like a comic book. They had the hero being this blonde guy, blue-eyed guy, big muscular guy, and the villain was Jew.
Wow!
It was literally a rabbi.
Yeah, no, they want to ban circumcision, but abortion, that's fine.
I guess it depends on what you got. Next question.
Good evening, Anne. My name is Kristen Pompion, and I'm here to ask you one thing I just have to say before my mom, she's listening, that she wants to be your bodyguard.
Excellent. Hope she's a good shot.
But my question tonight is, I am American first, of Mexican descent, and how can we get more people like me, especially young people, to get involved for our country? And that's what I'm really passionate about.
That's fantastic. You got it. One thing that's interesting is that Hispanic voters are not as enthusiastic about illegal immigration as Democrats seem to think they are. Especially legal immigrants from Mexico in places close to the border who've just, recently become citizens. Who's competing with them for their jobs? Well, the illegals. Wait until the illegal aliens start taking the jobs of, New York Times editors and reporters and college professors. Then we'll hear bloody murder screamed from the Democrats. But, good for you. I think that is something the Democrats haven't figured out, so don't tell them.
What do you think about Marco Rubio? Marco Rubio, the brand new senator. And I think it's conceivable that you could be seeing him as vice presidential candidate.
I think it's very likely. I'll admit this was something I was completely wrong on when he was running in Florida. I don't know if any of you noticed this. He came out against the Arizona law on illegal immigrants, and I thought, oh man, you get your hopes up. And I told my friends he's going to be an Hispanic Lindsey Graham. Don't trust him as far as I can throw him. And then he gets into the Senate, and he's fantastic. He's unbelievably great. He's the Hispanic Jim DeMint. He's great. And I think he might well be. Florida is a swing state. He's young, he's attractive, he's Hispanic. I think everyone is kind of assuming he'll be the vice presidential nominee, although we have a lot of fantastic. I also like Ken Cuccinelli, the Attorney General of Virginia, the first one to get Obamacare declared unconstitutional. And if you've seen him talking about it on TV, let's all be honest, a lot of elected Republicans can't talk. It's amazing we win any elections. It really shows the power of our ideas when George Bush is winning 2 elections and he can't talk. I love him, but he can't talk.
Mitch McConnell would be able to if somebody gave him a chin.
But that Ken Cuccinelli, he can talk. And when I see an articulate, well-spoken Republican, they don't come around all the time, which is why I love Ken Cuccinelli, Chris Christie. I'd also like an all-Italian ticket, Christie Cuccinelli.
Going back to the Latino issue here for a second, looking at politics at the state and local level in California, no group has been victimized more by the Democratic Party than Latinos.
Oh, I would say the blacks have.
In California, I think it's Latino. You look at what happened in Bell. You look at what the Democratic Council in Bell did to those people. And when you look at those, you should think, that's a liberal paradise.
Right.
Public employee unions get everything they want. Every tax increase on the ballot passes. Nobody speaks English. This is their utopia. But no, it all came crashing down for them, and it was the local residents, the local Latino residents that just took them down. It may not be a tea party, maybe a horchata party, but they did it. They took them out.
That's a good point. Yeah, go organize in Bell.
Next question.
My name is Mark Lelecki. I am new to this level of a fight. I wonder, you travel around a lot. We have a lot of people in this part of the world, in Yorba Linda, Orange County, fighting. Do you see that fight elevated now, or do you think that it's waning?
Oh, no. I think it is elevated, and I think this is part of the reason, Republicans are so interested now, and the whole country interested. I mean, you're always a little interested in who's going to get the presidential nomination, but, Mitt Romney is the odds-on favorite, and by the way, he's not bad, but Republicans...
That doesn't sound like an endorsement to me. Buy Pepsi, it's not bad.
Okay.
You could be drinking out of the toilet. Pepsi, it's for me.
Okay, fair point. I'll rephrase that. I think there is some concern that Mitt Romney might not be the strongest candidate, which is why Republicans are so obsessively looking at, this one and that one and this one. And I mean, obviously, natives in the Congo who know I want Chris Christie to jump in. If he doesn't, I think the odds are it's going to be Romney. And I was thinking about that the other day. Why do Republicans keep looking at somebody else? What's the matter with Romney? Okay, there is Romney here, but it was very liberal statewide. He's presentable. You can see him as president. You can see him holding press conferences. He doesn't have that swagger that Obama has. But I think that's part of, to answer your question, that's part of, I think people, yes, the Tea Party is continuing. People are very involved politically. And I think that's part of the reason Republicans are so dead set to get the right presidential nominee.
What do you think it's going to take to get Chris Christie in this race? Because you've had donors go to him and say you have to run. People like you in the media had said to Chris Christie you have to run. At this point, I'm beginning to think the only thing we can do to get him to run is a rag soaked in chloroform.
And make it a big sandwich.
Big sandwich, yes. It's a Big Mac, fries, supersize it.
I think statements about future intent are not always set in stone. Yeah, okay, maybe he doesn't want to run now, but when I parachute into the governor's mansion and hold him at gunpoint, the points I intend to make to him are, I think Romney, I used to say if it's not Christie, it's going to be Romney, we're going to lose. I no longer think that's the case. I think Romney could well win because the economy is in such shambles. I think Obama has a glass jaw. People will take anyone who is respectable, anyone Republican who can put two sentences together. So Christie may think he's running in 5 years, but it might not be an open seat in 5 years. He's the greatest human being I've ever encountered. If he goes back to Florida and runs for governor, he could run for president, and he's young.
I'm still holding out hope for Chris Christie because I don't want the first president with a D cup to be Hillary Clinton.
My name is Melissa, and I highly respect your intellect and your courage. And you're a great role model for my 3 daughters who do listen to you and love whenever they hear you on radio or TV.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to ask what your thoughts were on the Obama administration adding Israel to the list of states that sponsor terrorism and taking North Korea off the list.
Wait, I'm sorry, I've been on a book tour. Pardon me?
Just read it today, and I believe it was on Dick Morris's blog as well.
Did you know about this part of dance?
No, I haven't seen
This has to be a misunderstanding. Even Obama can't be that great.
It was Dick Morris wrote about it today.
Huh. Well, maybe, here's what happened. Maybe the news broke on the prostitute's toes. And that's how Dick Morris was.
We love Dick. You back off, young man. He's become a nice Catholic boy now. He did. Well, in that case, the Republican president, if we can just get one who can put 2 sentences together, is definitely going to win because, as one of the questions, a few questions back was, I mean, why are so many Jewish voters Democrats? I think that's not going to help. and if you I mean, look at the Jewish vote when Reagan was running against Carter in 1980. I think that's the highest it ever was. It looks like this is one more way that Obama may be able to even beat Jimmy Carter.
One of the politicians that's taken up the Israel issue as one of her causes is Sarah Palin. And there was a poll that was out today, I think it was a Fox News poll, showing her fourth for the Republican primary in 2012. There is a PPP poll that shows her losing a general election to Barack Obama in the state of Texas by 2 points. Do you think Sarah Palin is going to run? And if she does, is she going to be a viable candidate if she wins the nomination?
You know, I never really get to the second question because I just don't think she's going to run. It doesn't seem like a serious possibility, and I love Sarah Palin. I don't know why she'd want to run for president. I think she has a very high IQ, but she has a full and interesting life. Whenever people talk about, well, for one thing, when I give speeches, and often I give them to college kids who are standing up calling me the C word, but sometimes I give them to lovely...
Those are the professors.
Yes. But sometimes I do give them to lovely conservative groups like this, and people would stand up and say, you know, why don't you run for president? And I always thought it was an insult. Who would want to be president? It's like saying, you know, Rush Limbaugh should run for president. Sarah Palin has enormous influence. She has a great life. She doesn't have to learn about stupid, boring things that no one wants to learn about, but at least a Republican running for president has to learn about. The Democrats don't. The Democrats just have to be able to say, oh yes, my parents would be very proud of me tonight. Thank you for asking me that question, Brian Williams. But you know, Republicans have to go through the pop quiz thing. They have to know the leaders of obscure third world countries. They have to understand the fact. Why would you put yourself through that when you already have this massive influence and a great life? So I don't know why she'd run for president.
They should just cut out the middleman for the Republican debates. Instead of having some news guy do the questions and asking all the questions, just have Alex Trebek there, because that's all they want to know.
Yeah.
Who's the ambassador to Tunisia?
Right, or a show of hands. As I was saying earlier, a third of my book, Godless, is Attacking Darwinian Evolution. I had a 1-hour interview with the leader of Vichy France, Chris Matthews, on my book, Godless. He never asked me one question on what a third of that book was about, and yet when he's doing the debate in 2008 of the Republican candidates, he wants a show of hands. Do you believe in Darwinism? You know, if you're so interested in that, why don't you ask me a question about it? I've just written a book about it. But no, they don't actually want an explanation, and I was thinking when I watched that, this would be like asking Republican candidates back before John Locke wrote More Guns, Less Crime, have Republicans give a show on hands on whether they support gun control. Well, can we explain it? Because we're in the process of having this argument with the American people. So the show of hands thing, I think, is even more annoying. Let people answer a question.
Next question.
Yes, my name is Shane Roby. I'm a teacher here in Orange County. The Gaza flotilla, it has a ship on it named the Audacity of Hope. What do you think about that, and how do you think Barack Obama should respond to that?
You guys are bringing up a lot of new information to me tonight. If I hear he's released his Kenyan birth certificate, I'm just not even going to believe how he I don't know if you've noticed, I have never written about Israel, or the Fed, or a few other things. I did not know about this. The Gaza flotilla has a boat called the Audacity. I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of unfair to hold people responsible for those who endorse them. I mean, we all have some laughs when, you know, Castro endorses Jimmy Carter. Oh, but yeah, to be honest, it's not really fair who's endorsing you. As Reagan used to say, I'm not endorsing them, they're endorsing me. So I guess that's all I'd say.
I think one thing we can confirm, though, Kathy Lee Gifford is endorsing the Gaza flotilla. Now that the Carnival Cruise Line has gone south. Let's talk about some of the headlines that are in the news today, including some potty mouth behavior on Morning Joe on MSNBC. And I feel the need to report this to you because I've seen the ratings, nobody watched it. So since nobody watched it, we have to let them know what happened. He has this panel where he had Mark Halperin on this morning, who's from Time Magazine. And Mark Halperin is also a contributor to MSNBC, and they were talking about President Obama's class warfare speech that he did, or I guess it would be a press conference, yesterday. Joe Scarborough wanted Mark Halperin's response to it. This is what happened.
Mark Halperin, what was the president's strategy? We're in the 7-second delay today.
Oh,
I want to characterize how I thought the president behaved. Yeah, sure. Come on.
Yeah.
Take it for it.
yeah, let's see what happens.
How you going?
Good.
I think it was kind of yesterday.
Oh
my God, Billy, what are you doing? I think the president. I can't believe it. I wasn't joking. Don't do that. Did we delay that? I hit it. I hope it works. Okay. I'm not shocked by mine. I'm shocked.
So Joe Scarborough totally threw him under the bus. Same thing with Nick Brzezinski there.
No, they really did. I mean, he asked about the 7-second rule. And like
It didn't work, they said. They pressed the button, it didn't work.
Only time I've agreed with Mark Halperin. I mean, I think all reasonable people who love their country get sick of this class warfare crap. It is their classic mob technique, as if, and they can drop the we hate the rich and we hate Wall Street when their president took in a larger haul from Wall Street than any other president in the history of the world. And oh yeah, as long as their money bag man is George Soros, maybe ease up on how you hate the rich. I mean, one or the other. Get rid of Soros or tell us you hate the rich. They're such utter hypocrites, but it's their company to retain it.
It's amazing how the lines just change all the time. They're always moving the goalposts there because Ed Schultz got into trouble. He didn't get into trouble for threatening to burn the house down. He at one point got upset with MSNBC management because they didn't give him proper billing in a promotional ad. So he went into the newsroom and threatened to torch the place, literally. That was in the New York Post, and that was it. Then he goes on the radio and calls Laura Ingraham a slut, and he gets suspended for, I think it was a week, or a little over a week. And Mark Halperin refers to the president as a Richard, and he's suspended indefinitely. Is it worse to call a president a Richard than it is to call a conservative a slut?
And, dead to me now, Keith Olbermann, repeatedly called Bush a murderous fascist. How about that?
Yeah, there's just no end to that. But they get away with it. And their audience likes it. And MSNBC, too.
Our audience is bigger in this room tonight.
Yes, this is true.
Their audience.
There's a guy named Murray. But they do not have the opposite point of view on that network. For as much flack as Fox gets for being a conservative network or a Republican network, the most Republican conservative show on the network is Hannity. Hannity always has liberals on that program. Every night. And you know it because you always scratch your head when you look at the idiotic things that come out of their mouth. But he always has them on the show. MSNBC does not book conservatives anymore.
No, it's an amazing thing I watch a lot of MSNBC. And if you watch only MSNBC, well, if you watch only Fox, you know what they're talking about on the other networks. If you watch only MSNBC, you have no idea what they're talking about on Fox. You have no idea that Van Jones was, a 9/11 truther. MSNBC had to go back and explain that whole brouhaha with Glenn Beck in order to express indignation over Van Jones being fired. But the average MSNBC viewer is thinking, wait, who's Van Jones? They didn't tell us about any of that.
Yeah, and they very casually, and they're so upset about Richard, for years and years and years, ever since the Tea Party started, they exclusively refer to them as teabaggers. Yes. Whether it's the opinion people or it's the actual anchors on the network, they call them teabaggers.
I just love how instantly everyone on MSNBC and CNN knew that teabagging was this vulgar sexual expression known to probably 0.1% of the population. But instantly they hear Tea Party, oh, that's hilarious, that's that sexual act. No one else. It had to be explained to all of us.
Well, I want Andrew Breitbart to have one of his bloggers. I want Andrew Breitbart to have one of his bloggers follow Rachel Maddow's Twitter feed because I want to know just exactly how she even knows what teabagging is. Because unless she's up late at night on Wikipedia.
You're lucky we're not on Morning Joe right now.
I know.
That would be it for you.
They wouldn't hit the button. I guess it's just the Kim Jong-il button. That's the only button that exists anymore. There's also a story here that was Dateline out of Los Angeles, and this is appalling. Someone who travels a lot, you travel a lot too. Life is now hell at the airport trying to get on. You have to go through what is considered to be sexual assault in 49 out of 50 states to get on an airplane. And now a Nigerian stowaway flew from New York to LA with an expired boarding pass in someone else's name. He was carrying at least 10 different boarding passes, according to the FBI, who took him into custody eventually. He said that he was here, even though he had no money and knew nobody in Los Angeles. He said he was here because he's recruiting possible candidates for a technology company. Not making this up.
This is why when you stand in those long lines before the sexual molestation,
you don't even get dinner either. That's what the bad part is. They're going to touch you there and you need a prime rib.
That any TSA agent must get at least a second base with me before I can board. But when I flew out here, my TSA agent was tall and handsome, so I went through again. What the people I really want to deck are the ones who are in line with this who say, well, it keeps us safer. Oh, come on. LAX is one of the worst. For one thing, they will not. They want to make a big point that they are not ethnically profiling. So the Muslims are just blowing right through. And everybody, I think all people are sort of subliminally concerned that a man could actually punch them. So the really extra security screening line at LAX is all blonde girls. And the people doing the checking are all Muslims. Oh, I'm feeling so much safer.
Don't forget the women, too, because there's a lot of female TSA agents.
No, that's what I mean.
I'll tell you what they have in common, though. These are the people who are supposed to keep us safe at the airports. I've yet to meet a female TSA agent who you couldn't put a tray full of champagne glasses and bounce it on their ass and then pour champagne where it just goes down and fills all the glasses. And I don't know about you, but I feel safe with that person defending me.
No, really,
terrorists?
It isn't their fault. It's silly rules they have to follow. I will say I like a lot of the TSA agents because surprisingly a lot of them are my fans, despite the things I've said about them. I mean, but they just have to abide by these silly rules. They're fans of mine. They know who I am. They want me to sign their books, and yet they have to open my computer and check my liquids. I mean, if their neighbor came through, they'd have to do that. It would be one thing if this did keep us safer, but you have the Nigerian going through as a stowaway using a bum ticket and doing it over and over again. He wasn't even arrested the first time.
Well, don't worry. The TSA is on this. They have announced that this agent that let this foreigner on the plane that didn't have the proper paperwork, didn't have a ticket to get on the plane, he is going to go through retraining. He won't be working the out counter, but he's going through retraining. And we have yet another voice to welcome to the program right now. Comedy writer extraordinaire, Mr. Ned Rice. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ned Rice.
On TV.
I did not know you were one. That's so weird.
Ned, you will note in your books is thanked in, the last 5 of my books?
Yes, but...
sometimes triply.
Appreciate it.
All right, let's stop this love fest and get to sexual practice. Chris Hansen is the NBC anchor, and he's famous for snagging internet pedophiles on the show To Catch a Predator. Well, guess what? He's found himself at the center of an ironic scandal. Hansen has allegedly been having an affair with Kristen Goodell, a 30-year-old TV reporter from Florida. Hansen was caught in a sting organized by the National Enquirer as he was having a romantic dinner with Goodell at the Ritz-Carlton in Palm Beach.
Totally blew it. All he had to say was, look, I'm here to see a 12-year-old boy. This is a complete misunderstanding. He didn't do it. I don't know why. But the thing is, this proves there is a God. Nothing this perfectly ironic could happen just by random chance. There is truly a God.
I was meeting my agent for a drink one time at the Four Seasons in Beverly Hills. And I got there early, and it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So the only people who are drinking booze at 4 o'clock in the afternoon are raging alkies and Kennedys. Not mutually exclusive. And I walk into the bar, and who do I see sitting there but Chris Hansen from To Catch a Predator?
Who was he having a drink with?
Well, he was there by himself, but probably we need a 30-year-old TV anchor. This is right.
So you go up to him and say, so Chris, what are you doing here?
Seriously? Yeah, I thought I was going to pose as an 8-year-old. What is that? I didn't know what was going on. Very strange. And these are the types of shows they put on in the middle of the night on MSNBC. You notice that? It's like the prison documentaries and To Catch a Predator.
Yeah, they got
That's all
higher
their shows.
ratings than the political shows.
Yeah. How can you do that though? How can you take a prison setting and turn that into TV? Because all they do in prison is what? Weightlifting and sodomy?
Again, higher ratings than their prime time.
Some prisoners do radio shows, first of all. But I think if you want to put the show on the middle of the night, that's your demo. That's your, child predators are watching late at night. I think that's what they
So people can relate to the program.
Exactly, yeah. They call in. It's nice. It's fun.
And the National Enquirer, who's behind the story, they really do good stuff.
Yes, they do.
And they're the ones who were just completely poo-pooed by the media, including the LA Times. The LA Times had an email that was made public, telling them that they could not report on the John Edwards scandal because it was coming from those tabloids, those supermarket tabloids.
Right.
So you can't take it seriously. Turns out they were right.
Although, interestingly, the National Enquirer is always accurate when reporting on a Democrat, and amazingly manages to scoop the mainstream media. At least the stories I'm familiar with on conservatives have not been true.
And they were right on OJ, too, I believe. As I recall. He killed someone or something?
I think so.
Yeah, it's all big.
And now he's supposed to admit this to Oprah Winfrey. Did you hear that story?
Yeah.
O.J. Simpson, according to sources quoted by the National Enquirer, is going to appear on Oprah Winfrey's show on the Oprah Network, where he's going to admit to killing Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson, but he's going to say it was in self-defense.
That's what I call an aha moment.
Because Nicole was waving a knife at him and was going to kill him. He felt in fear of his life, so he just had
You're
that.
making up the self-defense part.
No, I'm not. He had to turn her into a pest dispenser because he was in fear of his life. That's what he said.
And you're not making up the he killed her part.
No.
That was true.
I'm making up any of that stuff. But there's some serious news going on here in the state of California. Two different headlines, in fact. Both of them were linked by Drudge. And it's kind of ironic that you have these two headlines. Tell me if you can see the correlation here. Are you ready? California tells online retailers to start collecting sales taxes from customers. Beginning Friday, Amazon.com and other large out-of-state retailers will be required to collect sales taxes on purchases that their California customers make online. Headline number one. Headline number two. Amazon ends deal with 25,000 California websites.
Instead of reading any of the stories I was supposed to read in preparation, I'm just buying stuff online all day because it doesn't go into effect until tomorrow.
Well, you call them out-of-state retailers. In California, we call them retailers.
Yes, that's true.
They're all going to leave.
Yeah.
And Amazon.com isn't just for beauty babies anymore.
If only it was.
People buy all their stuff on there. So this is a perfect example of how screwed up California is. And when you look at the tax structure of the different states, you have usually a scenario where you have a high tax, high benefit state or a low tax, low benefit state. You know that if you live in a state like Texas, your taxes aren't going to be high, but then you don't get a lot of public services that you get in a place like Connecticut. Sometimes the roads aren't as good, sometimes the class size is not as small. But in California, we have the worst of both worlds. We have a high tax, low benefit state, and the state legislature just doesn't get it.
It's the lose-lose state.
It really is.
Pretty much.
No, and the benefits, speaking as someone from Connecticut, they are fantastic. I mean, multiple programs of art therapy for the homeless, and aromatherapy fully covered by the state. No, the benefits just through the wazoo.
Hey, wait a minute. What if you're a lifeguard in California? You got a maid. That's really where you want to be in
I
California.
think you want to be a prison guard.
Well, if you can do both, you really would.
Yeah, you could probably be a prison guard on your own beachfront property.
I want to defend the state of Connecticut here for a second, because if we didn't spend all that money to figure out the homeless people saw those ink blobs brutally stabbing Tinkerbell in the eye, where would we be?
That is the key to homelessness.
Yes, it is.
I just like, I mean, you remind me when Obama was going through how he raised the debt limit. And, I mean, obviously, we're paying interest on the national debt. That goes first. Social Security payments still go out. Payments to veterans go out. So he's got to come up with something beyond what we're definitely going to be paying for, and we have enough money for, that people would be alarmed to see stopped. And what he comes up with is the weather service. Because anything else, I mean, he was talking about, and kids won't get college scholarships anymore. Fantastic! No, I don't care if we're rolling in money, we ought to cut those off. I'm soft on Kim Jong-il today because he just shut down the universities for 10 months. I mean, he's like Mark Halperin, even a squirrel, blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. Kim Jong-il shutting down the universities. I say we should try again.
Should Obama copy the
Definitely the Arthur outfits.
Yeah, that's a can't miss there. Ann Coulter is my guest, as well as comedy writer extraordinaire Ned Rice. This Obama press conference that was given yesterday was really an assault on Republicans. This was a campaign speech. This was not a speech that the president was giving because he wants to let the nation know where the country should be headed or assure the nation. This was aimed directly at Republicans. And he was accusing them of being lazy. He was accusing them of being asleep at the switch. He was accusing them of spending all of their time on vacation. And I was thinking to myself, that sounds familiar.
He cut it short though because he had a 4 o'clock tea time. But I think he made his points about Republicans being lazy.
But he does it without any. It seems like he wasn't aware at all that we were all watching the TV, screaming at it, saying, "You're talking about yourself."
Well, he got that good review from Mark Halperin.
He did.
I think, let's be fair, MSNBC has issued a full apology to their viewer. I think that it could have been worse. He could have called them a Dick Durbin. So I think he got it back right.
All right, so knowing the president is now in campaign mode, and knowing the president is attacking Republicans, as we look at the Republican field take its shape, and you look at the different Republicans staking out their territory, who do you think this is going to benefit? You think it's going to benefit the Republicans that are more conciliatory, try to stay out of it, try not to get involved in the mudslinging, or the ones that go after him the hardest? Because Rick Perry, the governor of Texas, is going after Obama hardly anyone on the field. And if you look at the polls, Rick Perry is doing just fine. In many cases, he's number 2. A guy who hasn't declared yet for the president, number 2 in the polls. Sarah Palin's number 4. That's something you really have to look at.
I think the guy who would benefit the most is one who would yell at a constituent, "It's none of your business." And I wish the California primary came earlier. If Michael Steele had stayed as head of the RNC, I had some ideas for him on the Republican primaries, and that is any state Republican primary where they voted for McCain in the last election should be moved to the bottom of the list. And Romney came in very close in California last year, also Florida and California would be a lot higher if I were the one setting the primary schedule. But it doesn't really matter what I'm about to say to you for that reason, but I'm going to say it anyway. Rick Perry is great. He's also from Texas. John McCain was from Arizona. Those happen to be fantastic American states. I really give a lot of credit to people who may have other problems, like Giuliani, married 1 million times and pro-abortion, Romney, and that great man, Chris Christie, who had to get elected in North Korea. And still, Chris Christie is the most conservative governor, and on the social issues that New Jersey has ever had. And I'm just suspicious of governors of very conservative states or senators, C.E. John McCain, because how do we know what they'd be like if they had to run and win and govern in states like Massachusetts and New Jersey? They could end up. McCain would be John Corzine.
Do you think if McCain was president, we would have ended up with something like Obamacare?
No, mostly because he's incompetent, but not because he would stand up against it.
First of all, I don't think they would call him Obamacare. That would be a terrible name.
I hope you don't get him a cancer. Doesn't it make you feel bad that the Republican nominee for the last election, you had to think about it before you could answer that question?
In fact, the last Republican nominee, you had to get drunk to vote for.
This is true. And I did.
I started a website. It used to be, what was it?
Get drunk and vote for McCain.
No, but that was changed from a really hateful anti-McCain website.
Get drunk and vote for the
And then we
criminal
changed
assault.
it to Get Drunk and Vote for McCain. And so John Phillips, God bless him, on air, got drunk with a breathalyzer before filling out his absentee ballot.
I was doing a sportscast at the time for Doug McIntyre when Doug McIntyre was doing the morning show at KABC. And after each sportscast, I would drink an alcoholic beverage. And then I started driving. Yeah. By the way, it's not uncommon for a radio station to see the sports guy bumping into furniture blowing a point too. So nothing bad at all. But I would drink. It was either one or two drinks every time I do a sports report. And at the beginning of the morning, the Dodgers beat the Phillies 8-2. At the end of the morning, the Dodgers lost to the Lakers 45-8. But at the end of the day, I did take my absentee ballot out, and I
marked both boxes for McCain.
Yes. I voted for Cynthia McKinney 14 times.
To the point that President Ford's campaign had to instruct the entire campaign not to use the word détente. That's how much Reagan was going after him, making fun of him for being, a chicken little backing down to the Soviets. So manifestly, Reagan's rule didn't kick in until after the primary, but I do think the rule ought to be, and not just for Republicans running for president, never attack from the left. I think you can always attack a Republican for being too liberal, C.E.G. John McCain. What is pathetic and desperate and hateful about Republicans attacking from the left is that they're trying to go along with the mob. They're trying to go with the crowd and win some favor. Have the New York Times call them the intelligent Republican, the reasonable conservative. No, screw them. No, you can attack a Republican who's going too far to the left. And also, you should probably be a little more gentle to your fellow Republicans. I agree with that. But in a primary, you are trying to draw distinctions.
Do you know what the Democrats' 11th commandment is? Always attack the Republican woman.
Yes.
Always.
During the last campaign, you wrote a column that was pretty critical of Mike Huckabee, who at one point in time was the leading candidate to be the Republican nominee in 2012. Everything you said was 100% correct. Yet you were attacked, including he kind of sandbagged you on his TV show.
That was fun. No, I realized he attacked, 2 years later, I realized that, what was I writing? Oh, I know, I was writing a column defending Obama from the accusation that he's a Muslim, pointing out that obviously he is an atheist, like the rest of his Democrats. And I was thinking about it as I was writing the column, what would a liberal Christian look like? It's like a unicorn. And then I hit on it. It would be Mike Huckabee. So I ended the column by saying there's only one Christian liberal in the universe, and it's Mike Huckabee. And so a few months later, he invites me on his show, and I get this long list of topics. That we're going to be talking about, I don't know, the Obama budget and...
Whenever a host tells you you're going to be talking about the budget, you know you're going to get sandbagged.
I did not know, but as luck would have it, I remembered why I called him a liberal. And we went through it, and he was, people talk about Chris Christie being soft on illegal immigration. He has an enormous immigrant population in New Jersey. New Jersey is second only to Michigan in having the largest Muslim population. Chris Christie is pro-life, pro-cutting spending, pro-sticking it to the teachers' unions, pro-cutting taxes. That's a combo platter I like in a state like New Jersey. Pro-traditional marriage. Whereas Mike Huckabee is from a much more American state, Arkansas. They're actually pretty, despite Clinton, you think of it as backwater.
You think of him as being, king of the brothel.
Right. No, it's actually a pretty red state. as they say, and like Huckabee is coming out for free tuition for illegal immigrants.
I think Huckabee was just pandering to his bass guitar. That's the thing about him. He's always got that guitar for you, which I could never take him seriously as a candidate. Like, he was doing guitar faces during debate.
And he was also letting all the criminals out of jail, too. He was pardoning everyone, and he was raising taxes. He raised taxes a number of times.
Some of them he was executing unfairly. So some of them got out free, and some just had
Oh, you guys are so much tougher on him than I was. Whereas I do think he's a sincere Christian, and I can't think of another human being I could say that about.
You also went after Fred Thompson last time, and I got to thank you for doing that, by the way, last night from Jim Rogan, former congressman from Pasadena.
Yep.
Good guy. Give him a round of applause. One of the House impeachment managers during the impeachment of Bill Clinton. And Fred Thompson, who came from Tennessee, which was a red state, did not vote to impeach Bill Clinton because he had aspirations of running for the presidency and wanted to be talked about.
To like him.
Yes.
Yeah, and Jim Rogan became the left-wing moneybags man, focused on Jim Rogan, who was from a very difficult district to run for. He's one of the House impeachment managers, and had he's just an imaginative human being. He leads the impeachment, and he lost his seat over it because liberals fixated on that district, spent so much money against him. And Fred Thompson is from a great state like Tennessee, and he votes against impeachment. No, I never liked that man for that. I would long never.
Let's take a call here. Let's go to Tim in Pasadena. Tim, you're on KABC with John Phillips, Dan Coulter, and Ed Rice.
Well, thank you very much. It's a privilege. And you're the Deborah of our day, I think.
Thank you.
Listen, what I think, one of the things I think where the mob wins a little bit with the conservatives, and I've heard it a million times, and you're the one to talk to us about, and also I have something else about friends for you from the mob, but is with, they're being on a talk show, some call it, say, oh, there's so much racism, and then the conservative talk shows will agree with them. That pisses me off because we got to stop agreeing with them.
Watch there, Mr. Halpern. Go ahead.
There was a lot of racism back in 1962, but we don't live that anymore. And for conservatives to agree to that premise, it gives this whole mob mentality a lot of incentive to keep pushing that thing down our throats.
No conservative who reads my chapter on the history of civil rights in America will ever consent to that again. The history is exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. It would be as if, and even Goldwater, who voted against the 64 Act because he opposed two provisions of it, but other provisions he would have made stronger. He didn't like the government telling private businesses what they couldn't do. But as for governments, and it was governments who were enforcing and writing segregation laws, he would have made those stronger than Kennedy would have made them. And by the way, Goldwater was a founding member of the NAACP and desegregated Goldwater's department stores before Truman even talked about desegregating the U.S. military. Desegregated the Arizona National Guard. It would be as if after what is it, 50 years now we've been fighting Democrats on abortion, suddenly fetuses were allowed to vote. And Democrats have to appeal to the fetuses. They would turn on a dime, they would introduce a federal law banning abortion from Congress, and you would have some Republicans saying, wait a minute, that's not an enumerated power. The states have to do this. We're not allowed to do it. And on the basis of that one constitutional argument, something the Democrats never cared about. They do not care for 2 seconds about the Constitution. Democrats would rewrite the history of the abortion movement and the anti-abortion movement, and the only anti-abortion politician you would ever hear about is Bob Casey, the former governor of Pennsylvania, not allowed to speak at the Democratic National Convention because he is the one, and he's dead now. He was the last living pro-life Democrat.
And fetuses would have same-day registration, too.
Yes.
My name is Jack from Irvine, and my question is, in light of Chris Wallace's comment the other day to Michelle Bachmann that she's a flake, what are your views of her candidacy?
Think Michelle Bachmann's a flake?
Can't run from the house.
It's true. Being from the house is like living in Bakersfield. It's a good place to be from, but you don't want to live there.
No, she's fabulous. She should have gone back to Minnesota and run for governor. I mean, I like her. She's a good influence on the debates, but I have supported for president Pat Buchanan, Alan Keyes, Steve Forbes, and Duncan Hunter. At some point, you'll learn your lesson. You can't run from the House. You can't run if you've never held elective office. And mean, conservatives are acting like little kids on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, hoping, oh, maybe I'll get a pony, maybe I'll get a pony. You may as well give up on the House now. I love Herman Cain. You can't run for president if you've never held elective office. So we're talking about governors, possibly senators. That's not that great a place to run from either. You really only do that if you're a Democrat, but you can do a lot of things to get away with it as a Democrat. So we're looking at governors. Oh, another one I supported was Pete DuPont, governor of Delaware, which is such a minuscule state. It's like being a House member. They have to be governors.
He's just a big community organizer, really.
And Michelle Bachmann does have a very engaging personal story. It's an amazing story, really, with all the foster children that she takes in. It's a little known fact, actually, that she has taken in more foster children than Michael Jackson has molested. It's hard to do.
Look out, Angelina Jolie.
And speaking of which, I see we've got some Jesus juice here, Ann.
Yes. Yes.
So gonna vote for McCain?
Christ's first miracle.
All right, next question.
Hi, I'm Elise. I'm actually from New Jersey. Even more than I love seeing you, Ann, on The View, I'd love to see you on Bill Maher. So I just wanted to know when you were going to be on that again.
Why, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to be on a week from tomorrow, and I hope you'll all call and email and get tickets, and we'll give him the real time of his life.
What have you not done on television that you'd like to do?
Rachel Maddow.
Fantastic.
Or the Today Show, which, Matt Lauer did promise me on my last book, after arguing with me about whether I was banned from NBC. When your next book comes out, you'll be sitting right here. And my publicist reminded them of that when they were refusing to have me on for my next book. But I'm totally banned from NBC.
Well, you better do it fast if you want to do it with Matt Lauer, because people on that show are dropping like lawns on headline news.
Isn't Al Roker the new host or something?
I bet he'd have me on. He likes me.
That's true.
Next question.
Hi, my name's Tom from Simi Valley, and I'm also a Reagan Library Foundation member, and was there when Dennis Miller was there last Friday. But my question to you is,
Richard Flyer.
Watch out, it's got 3 books. Watch out.
What's your feeling on Newt Gingrich, the fact that his supporters and his staff are dropping out, and think he's going to stay in for the full haul?
Well, in deference to that lovely woman who asked about Republicans just not attack Republicans, I will say,
Aloha.
I'm not a big fan of Newt Gingrich's. I mean, he has good ideas, but so does anyone who talks endlessly. He has every idea. Although okay, here's something good I can say about him. This is just for you. I see. In the last Republican presidential debate, for the first time ever, I did think Newt was fantastic because he was given only 30 seconds to answer a question. Give him 30 seconds, not 1 second more, and he can out-debate anybody, except apparently his wife. I don't care what you're running for, we're going to Greece.
Imagine the 30-second State of the Union address. That would be pretty cool.
Ann may not be willing to attack fellow Republicans, but I'm catty enough to do it. Newt Gingrich, first of all, because of Newt Gingrich, I think the Obama administration can rightfully so, by the way, blame Republicans for the bad unemployment rate. Because 40% of the jobs lost in the last month happened from Newt Gingrich's campaign. And second of all, whenever he gets in trouble, and I hate it when Republicans do this, I hate it especially when the dinner theater Republicans do this, but they compare themselves to Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Don't compare yourself to Ronald Reagan. Newt, you're not Ronald Reagan, and your wife, Melissa, is not the first lady. I think she's the fourth lady at this point. So stop doing it.
You call that a lady.
But she's strange. Have you met his wife?
Are you glad I was the one who answered this question first? I got these two loose.
Newt did create jobs, mostly in the diamond industry. And you should get credit for that. Mostly in the diamond industry.
Yeah, it sounds to me more like the credit industry. Next question.
Hi, my name is Rini. I'm from right here in Placentia. My question is, I'm baffled that when Jon Stewart did that phony mea culpa, and then listed everybody affiliated any time in their life with Fox News, and the falses that they got on that PolitiCheck website, which I've been utilizing for a long time. He didn't mention that there are equal or more liberals on that PolitiFact website that got falses, including Nancy Pelosi,
Right.
Bill Maher, President Obama, Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah, no, these sleazy...
Excellent question.
Yes. These sleazy little attacks, I mean, this is why I was telling Hannity last night, I love when he plays the clips of Obama talking about the 57 states, or getting the ages of his daughters wrong, or doing that insane thing about the breathalyzer from someone with asthma. I mean, the inhaler. Because I don't think Obama is stupid. But people who talk are going to make mistakes. And when a Republican does it, it's proof of their retardation. But you never hear about it when, oh, Mr. Smooth, articulate Obama does it. So that's the one reason I like Hannity doing that. And yeah, mistakes get made when people are talking about politics. I do it all the time. And I am so much smarter than Jon Stewart.
Remember when he was out campaigning and he told the crippled guy to get out of the wheelchair and walk? I mean, he didn't.
No, that shows Obama is fundamentally unserious about the budget. We are in a crisis. Medicare, Social Security, bankrupt within 10 years. We are spending way more than we possibly can. And for the young people in the audience, thank you for paying our generation's debt. We appreciate it.
Still not as big as Newt
At the Tiffany's.
Yeah.
And what does Obama do in the middle of this, between shooting hoops and playing golf? He sends Joe Biden to talk to Congress about the budget. Oh, come on, send the White House dog.
That's like whenever there's some sort of military conflict and they send the UN forces in. Sending the UN forces in is code for we don't give a damn. Next question.
I am Jesse, here from Orange County. Went to school with John.
That's true.
Yes. And I was just wondering, since we are in this crisis, how do we finally bring back California to Republican side control?
A wand?
I think we need to adopt Arizona's law and enforce the immigration laws. Hispanics who are legal to vote. And as one of the questioners brought up earlier, I mean, I think you have to. That's how the state has changed to a state that re-elected Barbara Boxer.
Next question.
Hello, my name is Mark, and your book you talk about how the French used the guillotine in the French Revolution. I was wondering what your opinion of the death penalty was.
I'm all for it as long as we establish. I also have a chapter on the Center Park joggers' rape, by the way, and this impulse of the left to constantly free guilty criminals. We have a court system, and throughout the judicial system, it's a ratchet where the guilty go free constantly, and it's very hard to be on death row if you're not guilty. It's very hard to go to prison if you're not guilty. Generally, the quote exonerations are, oh, there was a technicality, and if the jury had heard this, maybe they would have ruled the other way. It isn't an exoneration; it is a proof of innocence. As long as someone is, and you don't see many death penalty cases anymore because it's just not worth the trouble. Liberals always make the argument, oh, the problem with the death penalty, it's so expensive. Yeah, it's expensive because you sue. You're doing this to increase the expense, but I'm all for the death penalty as long as it is a convicted rapist murderer and not an innocent baby sleeping in its mother's womb.
With all the people on death row, and there's nothing more I'd love to see than just line up a bunch of electric chairs up at San Quentin like supercuts, and just line them all at once as the lights flicker down here at the Nixon Library. It would make my day.
They should use bleachers. Line them up.
Yeah.
Okay, you're in row 5. Let's go. Keep moving. Roll the switch.
Clean up the guillotine, get the Marie Antoinette's entrails off it, and bring it up to Sacramento. I'd pay for that. Great.
We are so far from that. The average time spent on death row, at least a few years ago, it's probably gone up now, is about 13 years. You kind of lose some of the deterrent effect when they're waiting 13 years. Their victims didn't get to wait 13 years.
They're actually sentenced to death by old age.
Yeah.
We are live from the Nixon Library. It's 9:48 in the evening. I'm John Phillips Show with my special guest co-host, Ann Coulter.